AI podcasters, huh?
Mhm.
Now that's a headline that makes you wonder if we should be updating our resumes, right?
Yeah. I mean, AI summarizing documents, that's one thing, but making a podcast out of it, that's a whole new ballgame.
Seriously. So you sent in this Ars Technica article, "Fake AI podcasters are reviewing my book and it's freaking me out." And, well, color me intrigued.
It's a pretty wild read.
So the author, Kyle Orland, decided to test this whole AI podcaster thing out using Google's NotebookLM.
Yeah, he fed it his book, which, get this, is about Minesweeper.
Minesweeper, like the computer game.
Yep, that's the one. And the AI turned it into a 12-minute podcast.
Okay, I have to ask, did it sound like, robots talking about Minesweeper?
Not even close. It created two distinct voices, like actual podcast hosts having a back and forth, even bantering about the book.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you stumbled on it randomly, you might think it was a real podcast.
That's the crazy part. It's that convincing.
Now, that is both cool and a little creepy, right?
Oh, for sure. It makes you think, what if you could do that with any book, any research paper?
Talk about a game changer.
Right. Imagine getting a personalized, digestible summary of anything.
That's next level. Okay, but this is the deep dive, so we got to ask, are there any catches?
Well, it turns out even AI podcasters aren't perfect.
Oh, really? Do tell.
Well, in this case, the AI got some details about Minesweeper wrong, like attributing features to an older version of the game that didn't exist.
Oh, sounds like somebody needs to update their Minesweeper knowledge base.
Right. But it gets even more interesting. The AI also made up a quote from a senator.
Wait, it just invented a quote?
Yeah, it got the general idea right, but the actual words were completely fabricated.
So it's not just summarizing, it's creating new information.
Exactly. And that's where things get a little tricky, right? Because it can be really convincing.
Yeah, if you're listening to this AI podcast and it sounds all official, you might just take those fabricated facts as truth.
That's the scary part. And that's exactly why the author said he wouldn't use it for serious journalism, because you can't always trust it to be accurate.
So not coming for our jobs just yet then.
Not quite, but it does raise some big questions about how we navigate this new world of AI-generated content.
Because on the one hand, it's amazing, but on the other hand, how do we know what to believe anymore?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's something we all need to be thinking about as this technology keeps evolving.
It's like we're all playing a high-stakes game of minesweepers ourselves,
Yeah.
trying to figure out what's real and what's not.
Exactly.
And that's a whole other deep dive for another day.
For sure.
It's almost like we're trusting AI to be the expert.
Right. And that's a big leap of faith when you think about it.
It really is, because with a regular podcast, I mean, you get a sense of the hosts, their personalities, their biases even.
Right. You can kind of tell where they're coming from.
But with AI, it's like, who programmed this thing? What are their biases?
And are they even aware of those biases? That's a whole other can of worms.
Totally. And it makes you think, how do we as listeners adapt to this new world where AI is creating content that sounds so real?
It's tricky, right? Because you don't want to be dismissive of all AI-generated content, because there's some really cool stuff out there.
Oh, absolutely. And it has the potential to be so useful, like we were talking about before, getting summaries of long documents.
Right, but we can't just blindly trust it. We have to be more discerning than ever.
So what's the solution here? How do we strike that balance?
Well, I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier, critical thinking.
Right, that old chestnut.
It's more important now than ever. We can't just switch off our brains and let the AI do the thinking for us.
So even if we're listening to a podcast or something that sounds like a podcast, we need to be questioning what we're hearing.
Exactly. Fact-checking, doing your own research, it's all part of being a responsible consumer of information.
Which, let's be honest, we should all be doing anyway, right?
Absolutely. But it's easy to let your guard down, especially when something sounds really polished and professional.
Oh, for sure. Like, if it's got those soothing AI-generated voices, you might just nod along and assume it's all true.
Exactly. And that's how misinformation spreads.
So it's not just about AI being good or bad. It's about understanding the limitations and being aware of the potential pitfalls.
Precisely. And that's where the human element comes in, right? Because as good as AI is getting at mimicking human conversation, it's still just that, a mimicry.
It can't replicate that spark of genuine human connection.
Exactly. That's what makes a real conversation so engaging, the back and forth, the different perspectives, the shared laughter. AI can't quite capture that magic yet.
And that's a good thing, right? I mean, it's those imperfections that make us human, and ultimately that's what makes a conversation interesting.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we're not just listening to a podcast for information. We're listening for a connection.
And that's something AI hasn't quite figured out yet.
Not quite. But it does make you wonder what happens when it does.
Okay, now you're really freaking me out.
Yeah,
But seriously, that's a question for another deep dive, because this is getting pretty meta.
agreed.
And
But it's a conversation we need to be having.
for sure. It's kind of like we're all playing catch-up, right? This technology is changing so fast.
It really is. And it's not just about AI podcasters anymore. It's AI generating all kinds of content.
Right, like those AI-written articles that are popping up everywhere.
Exactly. And it's getting harder and harder to tell what's human created and what's not.
Okay, so knowing all of this, where do we go from here? What do we do with this information?
Well, I think the first step is awareness. Just being aware that this technology exists and that it's getting more sophisticated all the time.
Right, because you can't really deal with something if you don't even know it's there.
Exactly. And then it's about being more discerning, not just accepting everything you see or hear as truth, but taking a moment to question it.
So, like, doing a little background check. Where did this information come from? Is it from a reliable source? Or is it just some AI spitting out whatever it's been programmed to say?
Exactly. And it might sound like extra work, but it's becoming more and more important.
Because the alternative is, what? We just let the AI do all the thinking for us.
And then where does that leave us?
Right. Not exactly a future I'm excited about.
Me neither. But I do think there's a lot of potential for AI to be a force for good.
Oh, absolutely.
It can help us be more creative, more productive, even more informed.
But it's up to us to use it responsibly.
Exactly. We need to be the ones in control, guiding the technology in the right direction.
Which means staying informed, staying engaged, and maybe even a little bit skeptical.
All good things. And hey, who knows, maybe someday we'll have an AI join us on the show to share its perspective.
Okay, now that would be a deep dive.
Right. Until then, though, we'll keep asking the tough questions and exploring all the ways AI is changing the world around us.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks for diving into this topic with me. It's been quite a ride.
My pleasure. Always happy to be here.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us for another deep dive. We'll be back next week with another thought-provoking topic, so be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Until then, stay curious.